Animal Crossing is one of Nintendo's best-selling franchises of all time, with over 80 million copies sold since the release of the first game in 2001 on the N64 in Japan, and then on the GameCube the following year in America. However, basically half of all Animal Crossing sales came from the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons on March 20th of 2020, just 5 days after the official COVID lockdowns began in the United States. Do I think New Horizons would have been nearly as popular had we not gone into a full national shutdown? Perhaps not. But that is a conversation for another video. Previously, I made a video about my love for Wild World and how I believe it to be the best game in the mainline series. This is considered a pretty normal and mostly acceptable opinion from the Animal Crossing community. However, what does the fandom consider the worst game of the series? Well, the main series, obviously. We all know what the real worst game is. Ugh. I still don't understand what Nintendo's thought process was behind all of that. Anyways, what is considered the worst Animal Crossing game of the series? The original Animal Crossing? Surely not. It's the beginning of it all, a timeless classic. New Leaf? Of course not. It brought amazing and fresh gameplay mechanics, as well as great character design. New Horizons? Sure, it was good. It was also a lot of other things. So now what does that leave us with? Well, if the video title somehow didn't give away the answer, Animal Crossing City Folk for the Wii. Now, of course, we are all dying to know if I also think this game is the worst, because people on the internet highly value my opinion. Right? Well, let's talk factually about the game first. Animal Crossing City Folk was released on the Wii in November of 2008. Even though the Wii console has sold more than 100 million units to date, City Folk only sold about 4.5 million copies, nearly a third less than the previous game in the series Wild World for the DS. This was most definitely not caused by one of the worst economic recessions since the Great Depression, where housing costs increased, the stock market crashed, and the unemployment rate peaked at 10%. How could this have affected millions of families' abilities to give their children video games for Christmas and their birthdays? I guess we'll never know. Moving on, Animal Crossing in its most basic terms is a real-time life simulation game where you as the player are a human living in a town inhabited by animal villagers. Since the game operates in real time, this adds a sense of realism and deep immersion to the gameplay. You can catch fish and collect bugs, then either donate them to the museum or sell them for profit. The game features an in-game economy where players can earn currency known as bells. You can earn bells by selling items, completing tasks, taking part in the stock market, and more. Bells can be used to buy a wide range of items, including furniture, clothing, tools, paying off loans, and renovating the town, just to name a few. There are many things City Folk changed from the previous title Wild World, such as a new city area where you can travel to, access to different shops and buildings like an auction house, the Shampoodle, and the Gracie Grace furniture store. Up to 4 people can make separate playable characters, who now each have their own house in different areas of the town. Previously in Wild World, all 4 players would share one house. The landscape of the town now includes slopes and cliffs, similar to that of the original on the GameCube. Another change with landscaping is that the grass will wear over time if walked on repeatedly. Also, Tom Nook's store and the Able Sister shop are not locked to be side by side anymore. These are just a few of the major changes that happened in City Folk. But now, let's talk about why players felt less than satisfied with City Folk as a whole. Starting with, everyone knows and understands how the Wii controller works. On the remote itself, a D-pad, A button, B button, 1 and 2 buttons, plus and minus buttons, and a home button. It's designed to detect movement with a 3-axis accelerometer that senses in 3 dimensions: up, down, left, right, and forward, backward. Along with this, the Wiimote contains an infrared sensor that interacts with the Wii sensor bar that you place either above or below your TV. The pointer functionality allows you to navigate menus or aim in certain games. You could also purchase the nunchuck attachment that added a joystick and 2 additional buttons. Other Wii peripherals include the classic controller, which was your basic traditional gamepad, and the Wii wheel, mostly used for games like Mario Kart. The Wiimote was truly an innovation in gaming during its time, and the overall opinion of the Wiimote is mostly positive. However, in the context of City Folk, the controls are considered one of the weakest points of the game. You control your character using a mix of the Wiimote with the nunchuck attachment, with the motion controls playing a key role in navigating the game. Using the nunchuck joystick is how you move your character around. This is a normal mechanic and feels very intuitive. However, to navigate menu options and answer on-screen prompts, you must point the Wiimote at your TV and press the desired buttons. This mostly isn't too annoying to deal with, but after some hours of gameplay, it can be real sore on the arms. Now, you would think since the Wii has the classic controller, you would be able to use that. The game can only function using the Wiimote and the nunchuck attachment, or even just the Wiimote, but only a crazy person would subject themselves to playing with just a Wiimote. But you could use motion controls while fishing by doing a little flicking motion with the Wiimote. That's immersive, right? While the flicking of your Wiimote to fish or swinging it like an axe to chop down a tree is fun, many players feel as though it was more of just a gimmick. Although depending on what other Wii games you talk about, I feel like a decent amount of Wii titles also have some sort of motion control features that are just for the gimmick. Another problem people had with the limitation of the Wiimote was trying to create custom patterns. In Wild World, you could create custom patterns to put on clothes or place on the ground. When custom patterns were used on clothes, however, it would simply copy and paste the same drawing on the clothing's front, back, and sleeves. City Folk introduced Pro Patterns, which allowed you to draw a different design on the front, back, and both sleeves. But of course, trying to draw these custom designs was a huge pain using the Wiimote pointer system. I'm one of the believers that the Wiimote is truly one of the most innovative controllers of our time so far, but in the context of an Animal Crossing game, the overall functionality of trying to use it was, and still is, a huge turnoff for players. Thankfully, with the newest edition of New Horizons, they mostly axed motion controls completely. You have the option to participate in group stretches outside of the town hall, where you can use the Joy-Cons to do a quick little yoga routine. Mostly just a gimmick, but a nice little minigame to play to help get the player moving. Overall, the controls and Wiimote usage in City Folk can stop a decent amount of players from being able to enjoy the game to its full capacity. Especially when I'm in the middle of fishing and the batteries in my controller die, and of course my mom hadn't bought any more batteries, so now I have to open up the back of the TV remote, take the batteries out of that, but then I forgot to put the batteries back into the TV remote when I was done playing, and now I'm grounded. Sorry, got a little sidetracked there. Anyways, next section. Returning to the beginning, the original Animal Crossing from Japan was released on the N64, a home console. The American version was released for GameCube, a home console. When Wild World was released a year later, we had Nintendo's best-selling console, the DS. A year after that, we had the release of the Wii console, but we wouldn't see City Folk release until 2 years after that. Perhaps had the game been released closer to the launch of the Wii console, sales could have been better, or even an Animal Crossing themed Wii that could have come bundled with the game, like the limited edition Red Wii that was released to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Super Mario Bros., or the basic Mario Kart Wii bundle. Handheld versus home console serves two different audiences at its core. Handhelds are fantastic for the single user experience of playing single player games, such as Legend of Zelda, Pokemon, and Animal Crossing. You can take a handheld device almost anywhere, and use headphones in crowded areas or when you need to be respectful of other people. In the case of home consoles, the Wii specifically, is geared towards a shared experience among friends and family. Games such as Wii Sports, Just Dance, and Mario Party thrived on the Wii. But trying to convince my parents to let me use the TV for hours on end to play Animal Crossing was easier said than done. Countless times I was caught in the middle of the night playing City Folk with the TV volume on 5, sneaking in extra playtime. As a child, it was much easier to sneak play your DS under the covers versus trying to discreetly tiptoe into the living room to turn on your TV. Had City Folk added the ability for at least 2-player couch co-op, they could have sold the multiplayer experience a tad more. But as it stands, only one player may play the game at a time, so at best it was a disconnected co-op experience of sharing a town with your siblings or guardians. While the Wii was superior to the DS in terms of performance, in the context of Animal Crossing specifically, I feel as though it stands much taller on handheld devices like the DS, and eventually on the 3DS in 2013 with New Leaf. New Horizons, you could argue, is the quote-unquote best of both worlds. I do have many thoughts about New Horizons, but I will contain them. Next topic. Possibly considered one of the most important parts of any Animal Crossing game is the villagers. City Folk features 210 villagers in total, 131 from the N64 Japanese version, Dobutsu no Mori, 8 from Animal Crossing, 35 from Dobutsu no Mori E+, the Japanese-only enhanced re-release for the GameCube, 18 from Wild World, and 18 brand new. City Folk includes the return of 42 villagers who were cut from Wild World. Each villager is assigned a personality type. These are normal, peppy, snooty, cranky, jock, and lazy. The series as a whole shines with its villager design, each one looking original and unique, as well as each of them having their own birthdays and individual catchphrases. However, as the Animal Crossing games have progressed with each new installment, fans have noticed that interacting with villagers has become more and more shallow and repetitive. The difference in dialogue with villagers from Wild World to City Folk isn't as drastic as some people would say, but I do believe this was the beginning of the end, with villager dialogue and interactions becoming watered down. Mostly in City Folk, the problem was that the villagers would become repetitive in their conversations and sayings. But this could have been attributed to the fact that if you have too many overlapping personality types, this would cause the feeling of repetitiveness. With the maximum amount of villagers you could have being 10, and with 6 personality types, you could have 1 of each, and then 1 extra of 4 of your preferred personality types. I think that makes sense. Or maybe you were the kind of player to have only 1 personality type, which is definitely a choice. Who am I to judge? City Folk unfortunately removed one of the best features of Wild World, which was villager photos. After gaining enough friendship with a villager, you may be given a photo frame of that villager that you could display in your house. If you interacted with the photo, it would give you a special quote from that villager. Even though photos didn't really add much gameplay, it was almost like a trophy of achievement for playing the game a lot, and when you finally got your favorite villager photo, it was a moment of triumph. Perhaps people's displeasure with villager dialogue can be explained by the fact that the player base at the time was probably younger, and as you age, your vocabulary expands and your ability to read more complex writings improves. Usually. Speaking honestly, I played Wild World when I was 8 till about 10, and then played City Folk at 11. I didn't pay much attention to the dialogue. I laughed when the villagers said funny things, I was sad when they said sad things, etc., etc. It wasn't until I revisited the games as a later teen did I realize how differently I read and viewed the dialogue. Obviously, Animal Crossing at its core is meant for children to enjoy, and the dialogue needs to be easily understood. So this is where criticism of the game starts to become a tad nitpicky. Villagers can also choose to suddenly move away. This is just a returning feature from the previous games and wasn't removed until New Horizons, but I included it because it is really a huge complaint that people had about the game in general. City Folk also saw the return of holiday events and special characters, such as Franklin and the Harvest Festival, Jack and Halloween, Jingle and Toy Day, as well as Zipper T Bunny and Bunny Day. The return of holidays was a fantastic decision from Nintendo, as I have such fond memories of booting up City Folk after getting home from trick-or-treating and continuing the Halloween spirit in-game with my villagers. City Folk also added numerous new special characters to help take some work off of our old turtles back, such as Nat and Chip for the bug and fish off. Some of my favorite special characters come from City Folk, such as Serena, a goddess dog who appears in the town fountain and can potentially give you a gold or silver axe in exchange for a regular axe. She'll ask a series of questions like, "How do I look today?" Or, "Did I seem goddessy?" How you answer the questions has zero effect on whether or not you receive a gold, silver, or regular axe, or even nothing at all. Sadly, she has not returned, but I still hold hope that one day she will make an appearance again. Another one of my favorite special characters is Phineas, whose only job in City Folk was to give out handheld items such as balloons, pinwheels, and bubble wands in the city area. He landed a slightly more important job in the following game, as a scout leader who would give you badges once you have completed varying milestones, like catching a lot of bugs, or fish, or being one of KK Slider's biggest fans. But what was one of the biggest complaints that most players had about City Folk in general? The next point we are about to touch on can be viewed as either positive or negative, depending on who you ask. Some would say that City Folk feels like more of a DLC or a re-release of Wild World with slight improvements and adjustments, and also the deterioration of some things. That there wasn't enough new content to justify creating a new series installment. While I think that Wild World stands out as a better game than City Folk, I believe that it was a necessary stepping stone from Wild World to New Leaf. In the original Animal Crossing for the GameCube, you could travel to the island that had one islander inhabitant and an empty bungalow the player could decorate. In Wild World, however, there was nowhere you could visit outside of your own town besides other players. City Folk added back a small, separate area where you could explore and shop, which, to me, adds to the overall feeling that you reside in a quiet, small town and occasionally travel to the city. Some consider the city to be too gimmicky and dislike how it is required to do certain activities, like changing your hair or buying art from Crazy Red. But I don't know how much someone could expect from a game that quite literally has the word city in it. Could City Folk have worked as a DLC for Wild Worlds? Of course not. The DS as a console was not nearly strong enough hardware-wise to handle something like the new city area, as well as the terrain changes that came to the town area. I think it's unrealistic of people to believe that every game of a series needs to be a completely new and fresh concept every single installment. For companies to be able to try new things, there's always the chance that it could be a flop. But the advancements that are made while developing that game make the installment after that one even better than you can imagine. For example, in City Folk, you could construct a new bridge, fountain, and a lighthouse or a windmill through the town fund. This is the stepping stone that later became the base of public work projects in New Leaf. Another example is City Folk introduces the ability to make pro designs at the Able Sisters shop, which allows you to design separate patterns for the front, back, and both sleeves of the clothing item. While you were still only limited to wearing a shirt if your character was male, or a dress if female, this helped pave the way for an incredible overhaul of how clothes worked in New Leaf, now allowing the player to wear shirts or dresses, regardless of the character gender, as well as adding pants, shorts, and skirts. You could purchase shoes and even socks or choose to run around barefoot. While the reception of City Folk is less than favorable by some players, it gave necessary building blocks for features that we came to love about New Leaf, and I think that that counts for something. Whether you love City Folk for the improvements it made for future Animal Crossing games, or hate it because it just felt like a reskinned Wild World, I think we can all, or at least mostly, agree that City Folk was not a bad game. Is it one of the weaker installments of the Animal Crossing series? Sure, but it shouldn't diminish the things that it did well. I, for one, love the music from City Folk. It is possibly my favorite soundtrack of the series. Nothing quite hits like the noon music on a Saturday after my mom woke me up at 8 a.m. to clean. Or how calming the 10 p.m. music is when I've stayed up later than I was supposed to. Another thing I loved, and I know this will be a scorching take, is the grass deterioration system. I know. But Vi, it ruined my town's grass. It looked like a desert. Respectfully, I have no clue how people managed to kill all of the grass in their town. I would place patterns where I wanted the grass to deteriorate so it would become a natural dirt path. And it worked perfectly. Perhaps any person that managed to turn their town into a desert had a, skill issue? But that's neither here nor there. All of these things can vary in opinion from player to player depending on many factors, like whether or not you played Wild World before playing City Folk, or if you had played New Leaf first and then decided to try the previous games. I am a firm believer that a person's favorite game in a series will often be the first one that they play. For example, my first Animal Crossing was Wild World, and I still consider it one of my favorites for Animal Crossing, right next to New Leaf. Another example is Fallout. My first Fallout game was 4, and it is my favorite of the main series. And I actually talked about Fallout 4 as a whole in this video, and people hated that I said that I didn't think New Vegas was a good game. Anyway, my point is that I think people will be slightly biased to whatever their introduction game was to a series and dismiss previous or other installments. But remember, it's not the end of the world if a random person on YouTube doesn't like your all-time favorite game. Really, it's truly not that serious. Touch some grass, breathe in some fresh air, observe a cloud maybe, and give your parents a call. I'm sure they would appreciate it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like, and if you want to see more videos from me in the future, be sure to subscribe. Have a great day.